Hi, I'm Ali from Untitled Mathematics, and today I want to go over Section 3 test from test number 6. So we're going to go over all the questions and go over all the correct explanations. There's 20 questions, and this should be done in about 30 or so minutes. All right, number 1. Salem wants to purchase tickets from a vendor to watch a tennis match. The vendor charges a one-time service fee. For processing the purchase of the tickets, the equation T equals 15n plus 12 represents the total amount T in dollars Salem will pay for n tickets. What does 12 represent in the equation? So initially the first sentence told us, or the second sentence said, the vendor charges a one-time service fee. And in this case, if we plug in 0 for n, that means the person is buying 0 tickets, T would still equal to 12. So that means no matter how many tickets we buy, we have to pay that $12. So that $12 is probably the service fee. So let's look at the answers. A says the price of one ticket. So no, the price of one ticket would be 15, right? So if we plug in 1, we get 15, plug in 2, we get 30, etc. 2, the amount of the service fee in dollars. So yeah, B sounds about right. Let's read C and D real quick. The total amount in dollars Salem will pay for one ticket. So that's essentially the same thing as A, so that's probably not it. D, the total amount in dollars Salem will pay for any number of tickets. Yeah, that doesn't make sense, right? Because the number of the amount of money he or she pays increases. So it can be a constant amount. So B is the only one that makes sense. So answer is B. All right, let's go to number 2. So it looks like they started off with pretty wordy problems. The learner buys 2 kinds of fertilizer. Fertilizer A contains 60% filler material by weight. So let's write that out. We have A, which has 60%, and B, which has 40%. So A, we'll say 0.6, and B, 0.4. Together, the fertilizers bought by the gardener contained a total of 240 pounds of filler materials. So 240 pounds of filler materials. And we got to notice that only 60% of A is filler materials and only 40% of A is filler materials. All right, let's keep going. Which equation models this relationship where X is the number of pounds of fertilizer A, so X, and then Y is the number of pounds of fertilizer B. So we know that 60% of A is filler material, so 0.6 times X, right? And then 0.4 times Y. And if you add those, you get the 240 pounds of filler material. And so that one is B. All right, let's go to the next one. So it says, what is the sum of the complex numbers 2 plus 3i and 4 plus 8i? So in this case, we can treat I as just a variable. So like we can pretend like we have 2 plus 3x and 4 plus 8x, right? It's essentially the same exact thing. Now they tell us I is the square root of -1, but we don't really care about that in this case. But we'll just write that anyway, and then we'll take the sum. So we have 2 plus 3i plus 4 plus 8i. So we combine like terms here, so 2 and 4, that's 6. And then 3i and 8i, that's 11i. So 6 plus 11i, which is C. Alright, I'm getting tired of this color. Let me switch it up. Number 4. We have 4x squared minus 9 is equal to px plus t times quantity px minus t. And the equation above, p and t are constants, which the following could be the value of p. So we have 4x squared minus 9 is equal to px plus t times px minus t. Okay, well, let's see what they're asking. So they say that p and t are constants, so they're just some numbers, right? Which the following could be value of p. Okay, just p. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply it out to get this equation or this expression on the right into the format of the expression on the left. So let's multiply it out. We're going to use FOIL, right? We're going to multiply everything by everything. Px times px, that's p squared x squared. Px times negative t, that's minus pxt. And then plus pxt, and then minus t squared. So these go away, but we don't really care about that. Let's just set this equal to this. So we have 4x squared minus 9. So we notice that the only term that has an x squared term is this right here, which has a p squared term as well. So we know that p squared has to be equal to 4, right? Because these equations or these expressions need to be equal to each other. So p squared is equal to 4, so that means p has to be either 2 or -2. And in this case, -2 is not an answer, so p equals 2. So the answer is A. Alright, let's go to number 5. Which of the following is a graph of the equation y equals 2x minus 5 in the xy plane? Okay, so this one's not too bad. They just ask us for basically graphing this line, right? And I think the easiest way to do this is actually just plug in a few points and check them with the answers. I think that's probably the quickest way. So I know an easy point to check is if I plug in 0 for x, I get -5 for y. So I'm going to check which graphs give me this point on the line. So A, it doesn't look like 0, -5 is a point, so I'm going to cross out A. So if you were actually taking the test, you would just cross it out on the paper, but I'm going to write it right here and then cross them out. Okay, so B. Okay, B looks like it has 0, -5, so I'm going to check off B, but we still need to check it with another point probably. C doesn't have 0, -5, so we cross that out. D has 0, -5 as well. So now you have to try one more point and see which one matches. Or another thing we could do here actually is check the slope. We know that if a line has a positive slope, it's supposed to be something like this. As x increases, y needs to increase. And if a line has, so this is a positive slope, if a line has a negative slope, it should be something like this. As x increases, y needs to decrease. And it looks like we have a positive slope here, and the only one that has a positive slope is D. So our answer is D. Or you could have checked another point. So if you didn't really understand what that meant, you can just check another point, and it should give you the same answer. Number 6. All right, so we have if x equals 2/3 y and y equals 18, what is the value of 2x minus 3? Okay, so in this case, they tell us x is equal to 2/3 of y, and then they tell us that y is 18. And then what they're asking us is the value of 2x minus 3. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to find x, and then I can just multiply that value by 2 and subtract 3 from it. So let's do that. So to find x, I can just substitute the value for y that we know, right? So 2/3 y is just 2/3 18. And then I know that 2/3 of 18, well, 2 times 18 is 36. 36 divided by 3 is 12. So x has to be 12. Now, again, we're not looking for 12, right? And that's an answer, so that's probably an answer that few students will pick. But we're looking for 2x minus 3. So 2 times 12 minus 3, which will be 24 minus 3, which is 21. So the answer is A. So you got to be careful with these questions. You have to go back and see what they're actually asking, because it's very tempting to just pick 12 once you solve for x. But you have to remember that they're asking for 2x minus 3, not for just x. All right, number 7. Okay, so for these type of questions, if I don't have time, what I do is I notice that all the answers are just solving for a certain variable in terms of other variables. That means L equals something, something, and H, right? And what I do for these questions is I don't read the question. I just look at the equation they give me and I solve it for the variable that they're asking for. So if you don't have time, you can do that. But if you do have time, you can just read the context, which in this case won't matter, but let's read it anyway. So a bricklayer uses the formula N equals 7 times L times H to estimate the number of bricks N needed to build a wall that is L feet long and H feet high, which the following correctly expresses L in terms of N and H. So yeah, we just have to basically solve for L. And this one's actually pretty easy to do, so all we have to do is divide by 7H, and the H goes away, the 7 goes away, and again, remember you have to do it to both sides, right? So L equals N over 7H. So it looks like the answer is C. And B looks very similar, right? Because N and H, they look very similar here. So don't get that confused. All right, number 8. So for number 8, we have the table above shows some values of the function w and t. Okay. So what that means is they give us some values of x, right? And then we have the outputs of w the function w and the function t. For which values of x is w of x plus plus t of x equal to x? Okay, that's an interesting question. So basically what we're looking for here is for this plus this to be equal to this. So the summation of these two columns need to be equal to the first column. So maybe pause the video and go back and think about that for a sec. Now, so in this case, I'm gonna look at the columns. It looks like actually the second row is gives me that, right? 3, which is w of x, plus -1, which is t of x, is equal to 2, right? And that's true. 3 minus 1 is equal to 2, so the answer is B. And because remember, they asked for the value of x, which makes that true. So the value of x is 2, which is B. And this is a bit confusing, so I would encourage you to maybe go back and rewatch the explanation for that right now. All right, let's go to number 9. We have the square root of x plus the square root of 9 is equal to the square root of 64. What is the value of x? Okay, so our goal is to solve for x, right? One thing I noticed here is actually they were pretty nice with this problem. They gave us nice square roots that we can just simply write as integers. The square root of 9 is just 3, so I'm going to rewrite this. The square root of x plus 3 is equal to, the square root of 64 is just 8. It's plus and minus, right? But if there's an issue with that, we'll consider that as well. But in this case, we have square root of x plus 3 is equal to 8. So we can solve for the square root of x first, and then solve for x. So the square root of x is equal to, well, subtract 3 on both sides. We get 8 minus 3 is equal to 5. Now here, what we have to do is square both sides, right? Because we don't want square root of x. We want x. So if I square both sides, I get rid of the square root. And remember, the key thing here is both sides, and that's the only reason that we're allowed to do that. X is equal to 25. Now, this is a bit weird, so let's just check our solution real quick, because there were some issues with plus and minuses, right? So let's just make sure it works. So if we plug in 25, we get the square root of 25 is 5, plus square root of 9, 3, is equal to square root of 64 is 8. 5 plus 3 is 8, that works. So the answer is C. Alright, number 10. Jamie is preparing for a bicycle race. His goal is to bicycle an average of at least 280 miles per week for 4 weeks. So 280 miles. Again, every sentence you read, you should write something in terms of math, so you don't have to reread that. So 280 miles a week for the next 4 weeks. Alright. He bicycled 240 miles the first week, 310 miles the second week. So I'm going to write first week, 240. Second week, 310. 320 is the third week, so third week, 320. Which inequality can be used to represent the number of miles x Jamie could bicycle on the 4th week to meet his goal? Okay, so what we're looking for is essentially the average of this to be 280 miles, right? And it literally tells us that. It says his goal is to bicycle an average of at least 280 miles per week. So to get the average of 4 numbers, because x is a number, right? We simply add the numbers and we divide them by the amount of numbers that we have. We have 4 numbers, and so we add them. We get 240. Oops, that's 200. We get 240 plus 310 plus 320 plus x, right? That's the 4th week, divided by 4. Well, this has to be greater than or equal to 280, right? Because he said at least 280. Let's see which one matches that. Okay, so this one's a bit tricky actually, because what they did is actually none of them matches what we have, but D matches what we have if we multiply both sides by 4. So they tried to trick you with that a little bit, but it's essentially, you know, it's exactly the same thing. We're going to multiply both sides by 4, and we're left with D. So the answer is D. Alright, next question. The vertex of the parabola in the xy plane above is 0, c. Okay, so let me write the equation of the parabola really quick. We have y equals ax squared plus c, and they tell us the vertex is 0, c. Okay, Let's keep going. Which of the following is true about the parabola with the equation y equals negative a times x minus b squared plus c? Okay, so there's two ways we can approach this. We know that if we multiply this out and use the formula negative b over 2a, we get the x coordinate of our vertex, right? But that seems a bit tedious here. So let me show you something else we can do. So in this case, we know that this parabola that they have introduced is a parabola that opens downwards, right? Because the coefficient right here is negative, so it's a parabola that opens downwards. So that means our vertex is going to be our maximum point, right? Now, think about this. To get our maximum point, what does our x-coordinate have to be? Well, our goal should be to make this 0, right? Because if we make this 0, then we get our maximum value, which is c, because c is a positive number. And so let me explain why that is. Because if we have anything that is not 0 in this square root, we're multiplying that positive number that comes out, sorry, not square root, squared. We're multiplying that positive number that comes out of the squared by a negative number. So anything negative that we subtract, or anything that we subtract from c, will make c less. So our maximum value occurs when this right here is 0. Now, how do we make that 0? Well, we make that 0 by making x equal to b. So we know that our x-coordinate of our vertex should be b. So the answer is either A or B. Now, it seems like it tells us another thing. We already discussed that the graph opens downwards, right? So B tells us the vertex is B comma C, and the graph opens downward. So the answer is B. All right, question 12. Which of the following is equivalent to 4x squared plus 6x over 4x plus 2? Okay, so for these ones, there are two ways you can do it. You can do it either the way that they want you to do it, which is, do some factoring on top, do some canceling, and then getting an equivalent expression with some manipulation. Or what I like to do is, I like to plug in values for this expression, and if you plug in a value, you get a certain output, right? So for example, if I plug in 0, I get a certain output that this expression gives me. And what I do is I look at the expressions I have here as the answers, and I see which one gives me the same output. And whichever one gives me the same output means it's an equivalent expression. But then if two of them give me the same output, then I have to check another point. So you'll know what I mean by that. So let's do it. So let's check x equals 0. If I plug in 0, well, I get 0, right? Because I get 0 on top and then 2 on the bottom, so that's 0. So let's see which one of these gives me 0. Well, A certainly gives me 0, right? So A seems like it works. Let's check B. B, if I plug in 0, I get 4, so B doesn't work. C, if I plug in 0, I get negative 1, I believe. And you could check that on your own, right? Plug in 0. And so that doesn't work. D, if I plug in 0, I get 1 minus 1. That's also 0, so D works as well. So let's check one more point. If I plug in x equals 1, I think 1 is a good point to check. On top, I get 1 squared times 4, which is 4, plus 6 times 1 is 6. That's 10 over 6. So I get 10 over 6, which is 5/3. So for A, if I plug in 1, I get 1, right? 5/3 is not 1, so the answer is not A, so the answer is D. All right. And the reason why I do that is because I'm not quite sure how they want me to manipulate it, right? So that might take a little bit longer, because it seems like they factored it, they canceled something, and then they also split up the fraction. So I just plug in some values and see which one's equivalent. All right, 13. 2x squared minus 4x is equal to t. In the equation above, t is a constant. If the following equation has no real solutions, which of the following could be the value of t? Okay, so they like to put this question on every test, and this question we need to utilize something called the discriminant, and usually students don't remember how to do these questions. So, and it's actually not hard, it's just you need to remember something very specific. So let's talk about it. So we have 2x squared minus 4x minus t, right, which is some sort of quadratic, and we want to find the value of t that makes this polynomial have 0 real solutions. So we have to use something called the discriminant, which is b squared minus 4ac. And if you want to know why we use this, there's a video that we've done showing why the discriminant is the way it is. So in this video we're not going to get in detail into that, but we have to use this to figure out how many, or to figure out the answer. So we know that 2 is a, right? Because it's ax squared plus bx plus c. Negative 4 is b, and t is c. So we have to plug this value in, and we know that b squared minus 4ac has to be less than 0 for us to have no real solutions. Again, there's a video which I go in detail into this, so if you want to watch that, I think that will help. So let's plug in the values that we have. Negative 4 squared is 16. Negative 4 times a, that's times 2 times c, which is negative t, and this is less than 0, but now we just solve this inequality. So we get 16 minus, actually plus, right, because there's two negatives, so plus 8t is less than 0. We get 8t is less than negative 16, so t has to be less than negative 2, and divide 8 on both sides. And the only answer that is less than negative 2 is A. Again, I encourage you to watch the video on discriminant. I think it will explain to you why we use the discriminant, which will result in you never forgetting how to and when to use the discriminant. Alright, so we have a wordy problem here. Let's see. A laundry service is buying detergent and fabric softener from its supplier. The supplier will deliver no more than 300 pounds in shipment. So no more than 300 pounds. Again, the reason why I write this is I don't want to reread that sentence, right? Each container of detergent weighs 7.35 pounds. Okay, so each container of detergent is equal to 7.35 pounds. And each container of fabric softener weighs 6.2 pounds. So I'll call that S, I guess. 6.2 pounds. Alright. The service wants to buy at least twice as many containers of detergent as containers of fabric softener. Okay, let's reread that. The service wants to buy at least twice as many containers of detergent as containers of fabric softener. So S should equal detergent twice as many. D should equal 2S, right? Because we want twice as many containers of detergent of fabric softener. So D equals 2S. All right. Let D represent the number of containers of detergent. Okay, that's good because we also chose D. And S represent the number of containers of fabric softener. Okay, that's also good. We also chose S. Which of the following system of inequalities best represents this situation? Okay, so we know that D is... Oh, okay, they said at least... Hold on, let's read that one sentence one more time. The service wants to buy at least twice as many. Okay, so it's actually D is greater than or equal to 2S. Okay, so which ones have D is greater than or equal to 2S? A does, and then also C does. So now we have to check A and C. We have to remember that it's no more than 300 pounds, right? So it's less than or equal to 300 pounds. And the only one that has... Oh, actually, A and C both have less than or equal to 300 pounds. So we just have to pick the right one in this case. And A is the right one because it's 7.35 times D, and then 6.2 times S, right? Because there's 7.35 pounds of detergent in each container, and D is the amount of containers. And we want no more than 300 pounds, so the answer is A. Alright, that was a pretty long one. 15. Which of the following is equivalent to A plus B over 2 squared? Okay. So we have to be careful here to not do A squared plus B squared over 4. This is not equal to that, right? Because we have to do FOIL. So this is equal to A plus B over 2 quantity times A plus B over 2. So we have to distribute everything. So A times A is A squared. And then we have AB over 2. So AB over 2. And then we have AB over 2 again. And then we have B squared over 4. And we notice that our answer is actually not there. But we can simplify this, right? AB over 2 plus AB over 2. That's just AB. half of something plus half of the same thing. That's just that thing. So a squared plus ab plus b squared over 4. So it looks like the answer is D. All right, now to the free response questions. And the free response questions actually start off easy, similar to how the multiple choice starts off easy and gets a little bit harder at the end. All right, 16. We have a to the b over 4 is equal to 16. For positive values a and b, what is one possible value of b? Okay. This is an interesting question. They give us one equation, and then they just tell us what's one possible value of b. So I'm sure there are going to be many answers to this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually just define a. They didn't tell us we can't define a, right? They just said a is some positive integer. So I'm just going to say a is equal to 2. So let's write this out as 2 to the power of b over 4 is equal to 16. And again, if I didn't do that, I can't really solve this because we have two variables in one equation, right? They didn't give us restrictions for a or b actually. So I'm just going to choose a value of a and then therefore find a value of b. Okay, so if 2 to the b over 4 is equal to 16, we can solve for b, right? We know that 2 to the power of 4 is equal to 16, right? Because 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16. So therefore, b over 4 has to equal to 4. So maybe pause the video over there and think about why that is. And so we can solve for b now by multiplying both sides by 4, and we get b equals 16. And there was many ways to do this if you chose a different value for a, but in this case, one value of b is 16. All right, number 17. Okay, so this one seems actually weirdly easy, so let's be careful. We have 2/3 of t is equal to 5/2. What is the one value of t that works? Oh, actually, sorry. What value of t is a solution to the equation above? Yeah, because there's only one value. Okay, so yeah, I don't think there's much to this. We just have to multiply both sides by 3. The 3's go away. We get 2t is equal to 15 over 2. And then we divide both sides by 2. Okay, so one thing we have to be careful here is when we divide a fraction by a number, we can multiply its denominator, right? So it's 15 divided by 2 over times 2, which is 15 over 4. Can we simplify that? No, we cannot. So we just put 15 over 4 as our answer. All right, so that one's not too bad. So if that one's not bad, maybe 18 is going to be hard. Let's see. Okay. In the figure above, BD is parallel to AE. What is the value, what is the length of CE? Okay, interesting. Let me draw this out. So right off the bat, when I look at this problem, I'm like, okay, it's either some sort of trig, right, because I see triangles, or maybe we're going to use some sort of proportions, right, with similar triangles. All right, let's see. So we have, the drawing is not too good, but I think you get the point. So we have E, we have A B. It's important to label these if you redraw it. I mean, I don't think you should redraw it because you'll have the test booklet, which is a perfect drawing right there for you. So actually, yeah, don't redraw this. Just work on the drawing that they have for you. So, okay, we have 8 here, 6 here, and then 18 here. And then what are we looking for? We're looking for CE. So CE. So this whole thing right here, I'm going to call X. All right, let's take a look. So right off the bat, what I notice is we have similar triangles. And the two similar triangles we have is this one right here and this big triangle right here. So for that reason, since they're similar, we can write proportions. We can say that the hypotenuse of the big one, which is X, over the hypotenuse of the little one. Actually, hold on, we don't have the hypotenuse of the little one. So we have to find that actually. So let's find that really quickly. We have 6 as this side and 8 as this side, right? So we can do 8 squared plus 6 squared equals the hypotenuse squared. I'll say h squared. So we have 64 plus 36 equals h squared. 64 plus 36, that's 100. So h has to be 10. So I went a little bit too fast there, so maybe pause the video and work that out yourself. So h equals 10. So we can say that x over 10, again, big hypotenuse over small hypotenuse, is equal to, let's find one more proportion. We can say this side, big side, over this side, small side, right? These are corresponding sides. So x over 10 equals 18 over 6. Now we can easily solve for x. Multiply both sides by 10. We get x equals 10 times 18, which is 180 over 6. So x equals 30. So CE is 30. All right, number 19. Okay, let's see. How many liters of 25% saline solution must be added to 3 liters of 10% saline solution to obtain a 15% saline solution? Okay. Interesting question. So here we have to do something called a weighted average. We know that, so we're looking for x liters of 0.25 solution added to 3 liters of 0.1 solution to obtain let's see, to obtain a 15% solution, to obtain 0.15, right? And we're doing a weighted average. We have x liters of this and 3 liters of this, so we divide by the total liters, which is x plus 3. So we have our equation. Now we can solve for x. Let's multiply both sides by x plus 3. We get 0.25x plus 3 times 0.1, that's 0.3, is equal to 0.5 times x plus 3. Alright, so we have 0.25x. We can't use a calculator, remember that, so we have to just work these decimals out. It's a bit tedious, but we have to do it. We have 0.15x, and then 15% of 3. Well, 10% of 3 is 0.3. 5% of 3 is 0.15. So 15%, we add those two, so it's 0.45. So plus 0.45. Okay, so we can solve for x now. Subtract 0.15x on both sides. We get 0.1x, right, plus 0.3 is equal to 0.45. Subtract 0.3 on both sides. I get 0.1x is equal to 0.15. Divide both sides by 0.1. I get x equals 0.15 over 0.1. So we can't really put this answer in the on the test because you only have 4 spaces to put the free response answers. So we have to simplify this. So what I noticed what we can do is we can multiply the top and bottom by 10 to get a 1 on the denominator, right? So we get 10 times 1.5, sorry, 10 times 0.15 is 1.5, and 10 times 0.1 is just 1, right? So 1.5 over 1, well, that's just 1.5. So x is equal to 1.5 liters. All right, last question. Points A and B lie on a circle with radius 1. Okay, so again, when you read that, and if there's no drawing, you should draw that before you read the next thing. There's no point to not draw that because eventually you either have to draw it or reread the sentence, right? So let's draw what we just read. Point A and B lie on a circle with radius 1. So I'm going to say, so I'm not going to draw the points actually because they might tell me more information about the points, but I'm just going to draw the radius. That's 1. All right. Arc AB has length pi over 3. Okay, so yeah, they did give me more information about A and B, so now I'm going to draw them. I know the length of arc is pi over 3, so I know that it's not the whole perimeter, so I'm going to draw, something maybe relative to that. So we'll say this is point A, and we'll say this is point B. And this arc right here, the value of it is pi over 3. Okay. What fraction of the circumference of the circle is the length of arc AB? Okay, so this is actually not too bad. They're looking for the fraction of the circumference of the circle, which is the length arc AB, right? So first let's find the circumference of the circle. So the circumference of the circle is 2 pi r, right? And the radius is 1, nicely just 1 here, right? So it's just 2 pi. And the fraction that this arc takes, well, that's just pi over 3 over the whole thing, right? So pi over 3 over 2 pi. And remember, when we divide a fraction by something, we can just multiply its denominator. So this is just pi over 3 times 2 pi. So the pi's go away. This is equal to 1 over 3 times 2, which is 6. So it's 1/6 of the whole circumference. And that right there is section number 3 of test number 6.